What's up everyone, Kaze no What If is here with What If Deku was a villain. Before we start, if you like the video, like it, share with your friends, comment, and let's start the video. The main office for the Hiroyama construction firm was a rather small, understated affair. Located in the Mie prefecture, the company had a solid reputation for delivering cheap, affordable building projects. They got the job done quickly and with an apparent lack of major problems. Around the area, they had poached a considerable number of construction projects simply due to offering better deals than the competition. Outside of the main offices, a regular car pulled up. The man at the gate looked at the man inside, a rather gentlemanly figure with gray hair and a distinguished black suit. He was being driven by a rather plain-looking chauffeur with a large pair of sunglasses and brown hair. "Do you have an appointment?" The man simply laughed. "Of course. I'm expected, check your screen." The man looked at the screen, then blinked. He could have sworn that this man wasn't on the list before, but here he was. A major investor, ready to meet with the CEO. "Well, if you're expected." The gate swung open, letting the man in. With the car parked, the tall man came out without delay, his chauffeur following after securing the vehicle. As they entered the main building, the secretary on the desk perked up. "How can I help you?" "We have an appointment with your boss, at 10. The secretary glanced down at the schedule, frowning. "Huh. I could have sworn." She looked up at the men in front of her, then back to her schedule. "Well, I suppose I'll just call the president to let you know that you're here on time. We'll wait here." As the two men sat down, she paged the main office. "Sir, your 10 o'clock is here." The president of Hiroyama came back. "I have a 10 o'clock meeting." There was a brief bit of rustling on his end. "Huh. Well, that's strange. I don't have it written in my day planner." The secretary turned back to the two men. "Are you sure you have the right day?" For an answer, the chauffeur suddenly took a theatrical bow, his gloved hands shooting out plumes of purple smoke that surrounded the two men. The secretary desperately reached for the emergency button, only for her arm to be gripped not unkindly with a gloved hand. As the smoke cleared, she saw 5 people in front of her, brilliantly costumed. Gentle criminal smiled at her with apologetic look on his face. "I'm terribly sorry, my dear. But the League of Supervillains is going to be robbing this company." Beside him, the tall cartoon rabbit lady smirked, gloved hands stretching behind the desk and slapping a strange circular device to the surface. A series of lights lit up on it, and then it gave an electronic chirp. "Systems down, boss." Mastermind stood next to the currently unidentified warping villain, a fist clenched dramatically. "MWA ha ha ha. Stay calm and tremble, workers. The brilliant machinations of the League of Supervillains requires considerable capital and raw materials, so we're going to have to use your resources. MWA ha ha ha." Dark shadows lurked within new clouds of purple smoke, lights glinting. Mastermind looked at the rest of the League of Supervillains, who were still slightly shaky after the last promises of no more experiments. "I mean it. Okay. After last time, I am thinking of stepping up our game. Taking on some bigger targets." Mastermind paced, turning over the table. "I've been making several upgrades to your gear dash." "We know," the other villains chorused. Mastermind paused. "Ah, right." He shook himself. "Anyways, I reworked the smoke dispensers on Mr. Compress gear. It should be slightly easier to use without compromising the storage capacity." Mr. Compress checked over the new devices for his wrists. "Impressive," he muttered. "I also reworked the pneumatic tubes on your gear." They fire faster and more accurately due to the rifling and upgrades to the air compression. He pulled out a flat disc. This is more of a general one. We'll be having La Brava hack everything already, but this is just a bit of trickery. He pressed it to a surface. It lights up and then makes a little noise, and nothing else. We'll be calling it a hacking device. Tsukachi sighed, glancing over the reports in front of him yet again. It had been a couple of weeks since the first appearance of the group calling themselves the League of Supervillains. To say that the group had made a small splash would not be inaccurate. Mastermind had already been a known quantity, causing numerous incidents in a relatively short period and escaping each and every time. Gentle Criminal and La Brava had been bit villains, nowhere near prolific enough to justify a move out of any heroes competent enough to oust them. The three others were relative unknowns. The Black Rabbit villain had a similar quirk to a minor C-rank villain known for minor assault and demolishing an empty TV studio. Golden Grin was wanted for petty thefts and using his quirk for minor nuisances, and the Warper was an unknown. The police and pro-heroes were working on tracking down these mysterious villains, but progress was slow. For starters, there was confusion about the nature of Mastermind, whether he had an intelligence or invention quirk, or if he even had a quirk at all. The principal of UA had retained an interest in the case, if only to helpfully offer a few pointers. Officially, the bureaucrats had decided that the League of Supervillains were a group that only ranked at C rank. The cited reason was that there was insufficient evidence of more dangerous abilities. As a side effect, it meant that the higher-ranking heroes would be passively funneled away from dealing with the group. An unfortunate effect of the industry was that, unless you were just a starting hero, most heroes would prioritize villains of higher ranks for being more notorious. Sitting across from him, the newer heroes on the scene side, checking over the board. Mount Lady idly flicked the photo of Mastermind on the board. So, you think Nedzu's suspicions are correct? That this villain is a Musudifo native? Tsukachi nodded. Nedzu is rarely wrong. All of Mastermind's crimes thus far are accessible by a short train ride from the district, and his first crime was committed here. The heroine nodded, digesting the fact. Death Arms scowled. What's making it harder is these idiots pulling their uncanny thief routine. Tsukachi just nodded. And wasn't that the most frustrating thing about this whole issue? These villains had thus far only struck places that they then revealed incriminating information for. That was one of the reasons why there wasn't much response after the scene. The police had to handle everything else once the information was revealed. With the League of Supervillains' first video, they had revealed considerable incriminating evidence illegally gathered on the internet. The Cybercrime Division had tried to stop these uploads due to the illegally gathered nature of the data, but for every video they deleted, another one sprouted up out of nowhere. It wasn't a bad thing that these businesses were being exposed. The criminal behavior that they had displayed was reprehensible. But Tsukachi knew that there was a right way and a wrong way to do it. These villains were putting innocent people at risk with their videos. Innocent employees had lost their jobs as part of this. Even the Yakuza cake shop had cost people their wages and several clients their goods. They'd even started to grow a fan base. Even if the Insane Maniac stain was far more popular, Tsukachi knew from his experiences in Narahata it was only a matter of time before the number of fans grew. Already there were people saying that the villains shouldn't be stopped, a tiny number of people that were rapidly silenced by every other person online, but it was growing. If it weren't for the insistence of Mastermind that this was all villainy, he would have called it extreme vigilantism like the Narahata group. Still, he could live without these villains killing people. He'd dealt with enough villains willing to use lethal force in his lifetime. A police officer burst into the office. "Sir. We've got the League of Supervillains. They're breaking into a construction company in the Mi prefecture. The heroes in the room swore, feet flying as they gathered their effects. As the apparent mastermind task force, they were the heroes that people would first think of when dealing with the shorter villain. It would take them a reasonable length of time to reach the Mi prefecture even on the bullet train. "Are there any heroes near the scene?" Tsukachi asked, strapping on his gun. The officer checked his phone. "Seems that there's some local heroes that are close. They'll be on the scene within 10 minutes. Tsukachi nodded. That would have to do while they traveled to the scene. With the rest of the League of Supervillains, they needed all the help they could get. Mastermind looked over his friends, who were wary. Golden Grin still had the crucifix in front of him. I guess I went a bit overboard, huh?" From where they were huddled, the other villains stared at the short villain. Inkblot was the first to speak. "Overboard? You almost killed us." "No. I just wanted to give you all the best gear I could. Some of these old prototypes could be reused, and I was also working on improving your gear from last time." The other villains shared a look. "I mean, it's nice that you want to help us like this," Mr. Compress began carefully. "But maybe a few less inventions. La Brava tried. And less trying to lock us in the room and forcing us to try invention after invention." Mastermind seemed to slump. "They're all so useful though," he whined. Gentle patted the younger villain on the back. "Then we can use the other pieces in later jobs. For now, let's see how we're going to get through this next job." Mastermind slumped down. "It's such a waste though. I wanted you to use all of these cool gadgets." Upon hearing the commotion downstairs, the president of Hiroyama calmly pulled out his laptop. He selected a folder marked pensions and moved it to the bin, then tapped delete. His screen flashed pink. "Request denied." Frowning, he tried again. "Request denied." Sweat was beading on his brow as he tried again. "Nice try, Buster." He stared at his screen, then moved over to the window. He was about to open it when the door to his office burst open, a black rabbit woman swinging a massive mallet through the door. He gaped, then threw the laptop through the window. A lot of glass fell, but the villain had managed to clear the distance, her arm stretching an impossible distance to grab the laptop. "Sorry, Mr. President. We kind of need your account details." With a rubbery noise, her arm pulled back to a more reasonable length. Why you won't get away with this? Do you even know who I am?" he blustered, making the decision to try and grab the laptop back. The villain in front of him rolled her eyes, then shoved him back into his chair. "You want to get hurt?" Reaching behind herself, she pulled out a bright red gun with a yellow bulb and green discs, helpfully labeled Acme Laser Pistol. She pressed a switch, the front lighting up with an ominous hum. He stared at it as she gestured. "Well." He laughed shakily. That's just a dash." He was cut off when she pointed it at the desk lamp and fired. A beam of bright green light shot out and vaporized the lamp. When she pointed it back at him, he collapsed on the ground. She grinned, pulling out a coil of rope. "Have a seat." "So, Inkblot. I've done some other stuff regarding your support gear." Inkblot glanced over the support gear. "I don't see any improvements here." Mastermind simply shrugged. "Mostly it's in the functionality of the various devices, making them software upgradable, adding some minimal changes to the look, that kind of stuff. The canisters with ink in them are better armored. I also did the utility belt to house the various canisters. Press a button for the relevant ink, and it'll pop out." Inkblot blinked. "Huh. She picked up the belt, checking it over. I kind of wonder why you haven't given me as many nice toys as the rest of them. Mastermind gestured over the rest of it. Inkblot, your quirk is incredible. I could include a few bells and whistles, but I honestly think your quirk doesn't need much beyond a steady supply of ink. Most people only have one of the abilities you possess. Inkblot started slightly. Huh. Usually people just told me that it was for silly stuff. Never really thought to use it like that. Mastermind nodded. I mean, you could potentially create laser guns and all kinds of stuff with your quirk. I mostly only use the freeze ray because I used it without thinking, and using actual guns and not quirk-created constructs would cause a more serious response. Golden Grin stared at her. Wait, hold up. Are you saying that Inkblot could be packing heat? Inkblot looked down. I mean I could. But, I don't really like guns. My mom insisted I learn how to use them though. Mastermind looked at her in a funny way. Why dash? She's American. The other villains let out a chorus of understanding noises. Inkblot just shrugged. I mean, I have a license to use them, but that was mostly for hunting. And anything I make with my quirk doesn't kill. Worst thing that happens with a laser gun is a burnt hole in your shirt, maybe a burn. Mastermind nodded. That's incredible, Inkblot. Inkblot flushed bright pink as he continued talking. A non-lethal laser gun is fantastic. It'll mean that we can make threats that won't result in horrific injury. Meanwhile, Gentle Criminal and Mr. Compress had headed into the main warehouse, looking over a few rather rough-looking construction workers. Here, there was most of the company's raw metal, wood, and other assorted building materials. Good morning, gentlemen, Gentle Criminal made a slight bow. My companion Mr. Warp and I will be liberating your establishment of some high-grade metal in large quantities. Please don't try and resist. The workers looked at each other. The apparent leader, who had some sort of bare heteromorphic quirk, glared at him. So you're Tokyo villains, are you? He spat derisively, just in front of Gentle's elegant boots. Gentle Criminal just tooted. That's rather rude, don't you think? Please, don't try and fight. If you all cooperate, then nobody has to get hurt. I rather detest violence. The bear growled. A few other workers glared at the dandyish villain. And what if we don't want to back down to some wimps like you? Gentle Criminal just shrugged. Then I'm afraid we shall have to come to blows, gentlemen. The bear glared down at the shorter man, the other workers getting closer. Gentle Criminal for his part seemed only mildly perturbed. Then the named Mr. Warp called out, startling the workers. I've taken what we came here for, Gentle. We should go now. Gentle smiled at his companion. Ah, perfect timing. No need for violence after all, gentlemen. Mr. Warp had already run over to the door, making to leave. As Gentle Criminal turned to go, one of the men suddenly started. Oh, I know him. He's that villain that gets his girlfriend to film him. Gentle briefly paused as the man continued. I'd show her what a real man's like, you pawns. Gentle Criminal took a deep breath, then strode over to the door. Mr. Warp looked Gentle Criminal in the eye before leaving. Gentle Criminal shut the door. Manners dash he rammed the bolt in to punctuate the statement, make dash another bolt slammed into place, Gentle checking the lock, man. The workers shifted slightly as the villain turned back around. Do you know what that means? When he heard no response, Gentle Criminal's face hardened. Then let me teach you a lesson. Glancing to the side, he swung his cane into the metal drink bottle resting on the ground. It shot through the air and hit the bear worker square in the forehead, dropping him like a falling tree. The other works shifted nervously as Gentle Criminal glanced over then. Are we going to stand around all day, or are we going to fight? Gentle Criminal looked over the slightly reworked gear on the table as Mastermind continued talking. I upgraded the costume while keeping the look. The fabric is Kevlar with silk with some armor plates around vital areas, designed to wick moisture away from the body. It's loose around the joints, designed to handle the physical increase that happens when La Brava uses her quirk on you. Gentle looked over it with reverence. Incredible, he breathed. Mastermind continued. The monocle has been upgraded slightly, adding in a targeting reticule similar to what I've done for Golden Grin. I'll need to do more testing for figuring out how to track elasticity. He turned out various other pieces. These cuffs have a built-in taser dart shooter and an electrified bolo. They've also been armored to prevent damage to your wrists. Gentle just gave a grin. You have outdone yourself yet again, Mastermind. The shorter man just rubbed the back of his head. La Brava checked over the cameras, making sure that everything was progressing smoothly. In the warehouse, she spared a glance to check on Gentle, then turned back to the timer. We've got heroes coming in. Gentle, are you dash? Gentle Criminal left the warehouse, impeccably attired. I'm fine, La Brava. Just had to teach those fellows a lesson in manners. La Brava nodded, tapping away at the keyboard. Her gear had some minor upgrades, mostly in the glowing lines on her gloves and the lack of a computer keyboard. They're coming in on your location, Mastermind. Understood, La Brava. We're almost done here, we just need to make a dramatic exit. Over her speakers, she heard the villains starting to leave. Now, Hiroyama, you won't forget the villainous machinations of the League of Urk. La Brava blinked as she saw Mastermind's cloak get caught in the door yet again. Mastermind. Damned cloak, I thought I solved this already. The villain muttered. La Brava checked her scans again. I think we've got a few more heroes than we initially thought. At least it'll be easier to get out of the way with less gear on my person. Mastermind hoisted up a slightly different pink heart-shaped mask. La Brava, you have a good idea of what I managed to get to work in this piece of gear. I have your coding efforts to thank in part for it. La Brava rubbed the back of her head. Ah, Mastermind, it was nothing. Nonsense. Mastermind patted her on the back. You're a much better coder than I am. Gentle nodded. Without your technical assistance, the Gentle Criminal YouTube channel wouldn't even exist in its current form. La Brava flushed bright pink as Mastermind continued talking. I finally got that virtual keyboard set up, as well as some other self-defense tools after last time. He pulled out a pair of gloves sized for La Brava. These gloves are the interface for the virtual keyboard. I also built in a taser similar to my armor as well as a pepper spray function. Tap the palm with your two middle fingers to activate the spray function, and clench a fist to complete the circuit, allowing for a powerful electric shock. He turned to Stitch. I added a similar virtual keyboard and self-defense mechanisms to your gear as well. Stitch. He gestured to a redesigned mask with a transparent blue visor with a light blue mouthpiece, as well as a pair of white gloves with Bluetron lines tracing the bones of the hand to the fingertips. The back alley doctor picked up the pieces specific to him as Mastermind continued. After last time, I want you and La Brava to be our support team. We'll have eyes on the cameras as well as checking radio chatter. Stitch, La Brava, I have some other surprises that I think you'll both like. Mastermind blinked. In front of them were about 10 heroes, the sound of police sirens in the distance steadily growing closer. "That is a few more than I thought would show up," he muttered. Inkblot had already pulled out her mallet, Golden Grin already preparing a charge. Gentle Criminal and Mr. Compress looked over the group. "Surrender, villains," one of the heroes called out, the others getting ready. Behind them, the gates of the company were shut, preventing an easy escape. Mastermind just shrugged. "Surrender." He looked at the heroes, relaxed. "Terribly sorry, heroes. But you won't be capturing any of the League of Supervillains Krikathum today or any other day. Especially not when I have these." He dramatically pressed a button on his gauntlet. Nothing happened. Mastermind stared at his gauntlet. "Hold on. Let me just..." He pressed the button a few more times, and finally, they appeared. Mastermind grinned at the other villains. "Friends, you may have wondered why I didn't have much gear to show you this time." The other villains stared at him. "Not much gear?" Golden Grin muttered. "That's what he calls not much." Mastermind didn't seem to hear him, instead turning to Stitch. "Stitch, I'm sorry that I didn't have any great plans for you on the last job. This time, I'm giving you the remote control to one of my greatest inventions of all time." He whipped off the cloth obscuring a large number of shapes, revealing. "Wow," La Brava breathed. "So many robots." Golden Grin looked like he was about to faint. Gentle checked over the various pieces. "When did you even have the time to make these?" Mastermind put his hands on his hips. "Oh, that's easy. I haven't slept in about a week. I needed the extra time to make the robots, and I still haven't quite got the materials to allow them to fly using Earth's magnetic field dash." Inkblot shared a look with Gentle Criminal. As one, they grabbed Mastermind and hauled him off. The shorter villain flailed in Inkblot's grip. "Hey, what? This is a day of triumph dash. You need to sleep. Now," Inkblot ordered, putting Mastermind on the couch. "I don't dash," he yawned blearily, then lay back on the couch. "Don't need to sleep. Am just closing my eyes." He rested his head on the couch cushion, and within a few seconds was snoring. Inkblot just sighed. "Honestly, it's like dealing with a child." Gentle nodded, already putting the throw over the sleeping villain. The heroes stared at what was coming out of the building. What came out was about 10 small boxy robots on spider-like legs, painted dark red. Glowing green optics scanned the gathered heroes. Pincer arm snapped in earnest. Mastermind just laughed. "MWA ha ha ha," trembled before Mastermind and his dastardly robot minions. "MWA ha ha ha." The heroes looked at each other. The lead hero turned his head to the side to look at the others. Where the hell did he get robot spiders dash? Mastermind pointed at the heroes and the drones charged forwards, scuttling at the heroes. The other villains fell in behind the robots, Gentle Criminal grandly gesturing through the air. One hero that flew directly at the villains was extremely surprised that the air itself seemed to trap him, before sending him flying back the way he came. Mastermind blocked a mighty blow with an outstretched palm. "Impact!" he shouted, pressing his other palm on the chest of the hero, sending him flying. He continued striding forwards, seemingly unaware of the closed gate. Mr. Compress gestured over the field, sending out thick purple smoke to hide the nets, oil slicks, and electrified darts that were being decompressed. Golden Grin backed up slightly, firing a beam of brilliant golden light at the heroes. They were forced to break, the beam hitting the gate itself and blasting it off the hinges. As the heroes tried to recover, Inkblot simply nodded at Gentle. With a dramatic flourish on the air, she leapt onto it. It stretched back, then shot her forwards like a cannonball. Her mallet smacked a hero who had grown to the size of a small building, forcing him to block the attack and knocking him slightly off balance. The robots themselves were relentless, throwing off a hero's weight by jumping on him, dodging to the side with disturbing agility. The heroes found themselves trying to deal with too much too quickly. It didn't help that when they did land an attack, the robots proved to be quite tough. They'd managed to take out a couple, but the rest with the villains were proving to be too difficult to handle. Still, they had to try and apprehend these villains before they escaped. The police were trying to provide backup and deal with the robots, but they weren't having much better luck on their end, as Mr. Warp's nets were making their life difficult as well. On the other side of the road, unnoticed by the heroes and police as they fought, a messy-haired man in a bright blue mask checked his screen again. He was comfortably sat in a hotel room, the door locked and a blue-tinted screen projected in front of him. He tapped a projected keyboard and moved his fingers around. "Got you," he muttered, one of the units on his screen tackling a hero. Now fully rested, Mastermind looked Stitch in the eye. "I've built the robots, but I haven't properly made their AI yet. Currently they're remote control only." Stitch looked at him with an odd expression. "So, what? You want me to drive them?" Mastermind nodded. "We'll have Mr. Compress deploy them as needed. If La Brava hacks the cameras, then you'll have the proper viewpoint to manage a large group." Stitch stared at the controls. "I'm not driving a bunch of robots and making them hurt people." Mastermind nodded. "I remember. These droids don't have weapon systems, they have hands and spider legs, but no weapons." He rapped the side of one of them. "They look scary and can take a few hits, but that's about it. They're powered with the same thing that fuels my armor and other gadgets in the field." That got a few reactions. "Your armor has a power source?" Mastermind nodded. "Sure it does." He pulled his shirt open slightly and tapped a panel, revealing a round disc with a bright green light. "It's not that much, it's a plasma reactor that I made a while ago. Gentle stared at it. "A plasma reactor? Is it dangerous?" Mastermind shook his head. "Plasma reactors are used in a lot of smaller support technologies, though mine's a bit more efficient. They ironed out all the bugs years ago. Plus, it's the most heavily armored piece of technology that I have. You'd need to be All Might or somebody to breach it." The villain stared at the light before Mastermind shut it away. "Anyways, with the droids on our side, we'll have an easier time dealing with large numbers of heroes. They look good though." Stitch considered the design. "No weapons?" Mastermind just nodded. "No weapons." Stitch glanced at the others, then at Mastermind. After a moment, he gave a curt nod to the supervillain, who positively beamed. "Perfect. So, our escape plan. Make a suitably dramatic exit, then have Mr. Compress shrink us all down in a cloud of smoke," Golden Grin recited from memory. "Then meet back up with Stitch and La Brava at our getaway vehicle. Get to the train station, catch the next bullet train back to Musudafu." Inkblot finished. Mastermind glared down at the police and other heroes, a glove raised in triumph. Several robots had been wrecked, but the majority were in proximity to the villains. "MWA ha ha ha. Today, heroes, you have failed once again to capture the brilliant Mastermind and the League of Supervillains. MWA ha ha ha." Thunder roared once again. As the heroes tried desperately to reach them, purple smoke wrapped them all up. When it cleared, the villains had vanished once again. The heroes glared at where the villains had disappeared. We're going to have to check the company itself. See if they left any clues on the robots. As if on cue, the robots melted into a thick sludge, quickly leaving no traces of anything that had happened. The police closed off the area and checked with the employees in the main building. Apart from some construction workers in the main warehouse, nobody had been seriously harmed, though the president of the company had been irate. He had subsequently lost most of his bluster and fury when the officers found his laptop playing a long video explaining the numerous building code violations that their buildings suffered, as well as some serious irregularities in the pension fund. The calling card of the League of Supervillains, a piece of card with a cartoonish graphic of Japan being gripped by a series of tentacles picked out in green and red, had been taped to the laptop. Yagi Toshinori pulled out his phone and dialed one of his other close friends. Within a few rings, his call went through. "Hello, Yagi." "Tsukachi." Yagi smiled. "How have you been?" There was a deep sigh on the other end. "I've been dealing with Mastermind's latest case. The police over in Mie Prefecture have sent me the details on what he's done. Apparently the joke villain now has a small squad of spider bots." Toshinori blinked. "That's new." Tsukachi sighed. "Certainly is. On top of that, we're getting a huge amount of corruption from the place he robbed. The Hiroyama company's corrupt as hell. Substandard building materials, overcharging, irregularities in the pension fund, it's a real mess." All Might winced. "I can't believe that the situation got that bad." He blinked, remembering why he'd called. "Oh, Tsukachi. I've invited some friends to my place for dinner. I was wondering, if you had the time, if you would like to come." Tsukachi was silent on his end of the phone. "Who did you invite?" Toshinori chuckled. "Some old friends, David, Mirai. There's some things that I need to clear up with them. A decision I'm making for the future." "Well, I'll be there, Yagi-san." "Is this about your successor?" Toshinori shook his head. No. I'm retiring. And, sorry this one took so long. First I discovered Pokemon Legends. Then I wrote this chapter, hated most of it, then scrapped and rewrote it. Please tell me what worked and what didn't so that I may improve the quality of my writing. Happy writer means happy story and happy readers. Next time, All Might retires. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more fan fictions like this, and goodbye.